to you in email. So forms and potencies. The thing to know, there's 4 major forms of marijuana today. The plant form that we're all familiar with, sometimes called flower or herb, smokable with some kind of fire source. And then now we have concentrates, THC concentrates, where the plant body has been removed and what we're left with is the THC. So liquid forms you'll see in vaping, solid forms you'll see called dabbing. And then we have this whole class of product called edibles. Those concentrates can be added to any food or drink out there, and they are, and they make up this product class of edibles. We also, I could have a 5th class there that's kind of everything else. These concentrates can be added to everything else. It's why we have started to see lotions and tampons and tinctures and patches and just everything infused, marijuana infused or THC infused. So it's quite staggering, the array of products that are out there. We also, with legalization, have this new advertising and branding normal. So whenever all of the bills that have been passed for legalization include comprehensive advertising and promotion allowances. So it's one of the reasons why you'll hear them called commercialization bills, because they're really about changing the frame in which these drugs are sold. And whenever you're talking about marketing language, you are talking about features and benefits of these products. So that is starting to inundate us in all the advertising mediums. We see billboards and TV ads or video more at this point. We had some TV ads in California early on, and they did get taken down, which was good to see. Social media, all kinds of clothing with promotional logos and language. The branding is just off the charts. There's no end to the creativity of the industry and how they brand, and it makes you wish they'd use that creativity for something a little less destructive. But let's talk about the plant for a minute. This is just some pictures. What you're seeing here is a large indoor grow. This is a large outdoor grow. Those are probably legal within the states that they're growing. This is a sizable, probably national park grow of some sort that is not legal. This is what the drug looks like when it's dried, before it's smoked. This thing in the middle is a home grow. All of the legalization bills across the country have allowances for growing in the home. Every state's bill is a little bit different. This is 6 plants that can grow in the house, and this is just a tremendous amount of marijuana. So one plant, this size you can get a pound of pot off of this over the course of the year. There's a couple of growing cycles. Pound of pot roughly is 1,000 joints, depending on how conservatively you roll. But it's just an enormous amount of marijuana that we're allowing in homes. But the most important thing I want you to get out of this slide is this statement right here. If you were to smoke a joint 20, 25 years ago in the 1990s, about the most THC you'd be consuming is 3%. Today, you cannot buy flower or plant form marijuana less than 18% THC. Most of it's in the 25% THC, and that's just all breeding and hybridization and stuff over the years. This is market driven. Users want higher concentrates of THC, and the market is delivering it. It's interesting, when I tell this to parents, they're all like, oh my God, that is a real different drug than when I was young. When I tell it to kids, they're like, okay. and what they don't understand, and we try to explain, is that marijuana worked at 3% THC. You got high, you got the munchies. People went to the hospital on bad trips, is what we called them back then. I have friends that have been on, antidepressants for 35 years from a bad trip they had on pot in college. I mean, it was a real drug at 3%. So the fact that it's gotten so much higher is just disturbing. Okay, vaping. I think everybody knows what a vape pen is and what they are, but let's just for level setting purposes walk through this. Every vape device has a battery of some sort. It has an atomizer or a coil, and it has a chamber that holds a liquid. And then when the battery heats up the atomizer, touches the liquid in the chamber, it creates an aerosol that is breathed in and out. So the first question is, what goes in a vape pen? And would love to get your answers. And the most disturbing answer is really anything in liquid form can go in a vape pen. If you were listening to Lynn Reimer's webinar Friday, you may still be reeling at the horror of that and what all she has seen in vape pens. But the three main things that you find in a vape pen are nicotine concentrates, THC concentrates, and flavors. How can you tell what's in a vape pen? Well, the bottom line is you really can't. Um, there's the pen itself is rarely labeled. These little vials of e-juice or vape liquids are rarely labeled well. Um, the substance doesn't have any smell that hasn't been added. So you might smell watermelon, but that's not because there's watermelon juice in it. That's because they put a chemical in it that'll make you smell watermelon. How strong is the liquid in a vape pen? Again, you don't know. We see liquid, these, they're not well labeled. We see concentrations in these little vials up to 50%. We've seen pods that are up to 85%. So speaking of that, there's two types of vape devices, an open type and a closed type. The open type, typically called pens or mods, and what makes them unique is they're the type where you unscrew the device and you add the liquid and you screw it back in, you vape, vape, vape. When that liquid's gone, you add more liquid, as opposed to the pod type, which the most famous example is the Juul. You buy the little Juul pods from Juul, you stick them into the Juul device, vape, vape, vape. When the juice is gone, you throw that pod away and get another one. So couple things about the Juul. Again, 2 years ago, kids had no idea that if they were juuling, they were consuming nicotine. Juul does not create a pod without nicotine in it. Kids are starting to understand that a little bit more, especially given the addiction rates. They're getting hit pretty hard with some of this addiction, and you hear about that around the country. Each pod has essentially a pack of cigarettes in it. Juul considers it 200 puffs per pod. That depends a little bit on how you consume. And if a lot of people vape like a bong use, where they take a big breath in and they hold, and then all of the nicotine and then the chemicals that are in that liquid get in their lungs, get into their body. But when they blow out, some of that does come out, so it is a secondhand smoke. One of the things I find fascinating about this is these pods contain 59 nanograms per ml of nicotine inside them. Juul is not sold in the UK because they have a 17 nanogram per ml limit. So Juul's too strong for the UK. So again, these drugs are just not trivial. PAX has both open and closed devices. This is a THC specific brand. Juul and PAX used to be the same, and they split off from each other early on because they were going to focus on a different user. All the cigarette brands have vaping brands as well. Here's some more examples of vape pens. These are obviously targeted to kids with the Juuls and the Star Wars characters and Batman. And then we have flavors. There's just no end to the vaping flavors that are out there that absolutely appeal to kids. So the other thing to ask, and kids will talk about, is, vaping's better for you because it's just water vapor. And so we always ask, is that true? And in fact, it's not. Vaping, again, you've already heard me use the term aerosol, is not a vapor at all. It's an aerosol, which is a gas that has chemical particles suspended in it. Again, when they breathe that in and then breathe it out, it is a secondhand smoke. Some of those particles do leave the lungs and go out with the aerosol. We also have third-hand smoke now with vaping. Those chemical compounds can actually fall out of the gas and land on surfaces and be picked up by humans and pets. So what are those chemical compounds? Here's a list of some that have been found in our food and our cosmetic supply. All of these have been found in vape liquids and vape aerosols. The ones in red are on the harmful and potentially harmful substances list, and it's all kinds of yucky stuff, right? It's formaldehyde and all the heavy metals. arsenic probably created from the heating of the juice versus actually being in the juice to begin with. So there's really, there's really nothing about vaping that's good for us. And in fact, we've had this massive lung injury disease that they call EVALI now. It started in the summer of last year. We had all kinds of deaths and hospitalizations. A majority of them were caused by THC use. A lot of them involved lipoid pneumonia, which THC is a lipid. THC gets put in an oil base because they're real compatible in terms of substances. All of that was causing problems in the lungs. They were seeing burned kind of conditions that might have been caused by pesticides and herbicides. And the fact is, our marijuana supply in this country, whether it's legal or illegal, is heavily laden with pesticides and herbicides. The reason for that is it's profitable, quite frankly. But the real reason is some of the regulation in legalized states disallow this, right? You can't grow with pesticides and herbicides. But if you look at California, we only have 85% of our current growing companies inside, or no, we have 15% of the current growers in our state inside the legal framework. 85% are still outside it. They haven't applied for licenses. And even within the 15% that have applied for licenses, there's no money for regulatory enforcement. So we're just relying on everyone operating and saying that they're abiding by the guidelines. And I'm sure some are. I'm sure some aren't. So then we had COVID show up, and that's obviously a pulmonary and lung disease. We had NIDA asking everyone to stop smoking nicotine and THC. We know that THC, that they both compromise the immune system on top of damaging the lungs. So moving quickly on, solid concentrates, dabs, you'll hear them called wax, shatter, butter. They are the crack cocaine of marijuana. We see almost near pure THC in these products. Edibles. Two things I'd say about edibles, when they're in packages like this, you can kind of tell that's got probably pot in it. I know Colorado has a stamp that everything with THC must have on it. If they're sitting on a table without the marijuana garnish, you may not know one way or another that that has THC in it. It does not necessarily. Right. So anyway, these cookies, if that THC concentrate is well refined, you will not taste or smell it in any kind of food, which is, everyone has to be more careful when they go to parties now, especially kids. The other thing I would tell you about edibles is the high is different from a timing and a quality standpoint. When you smoke marijuana, it hits your bloodstream through the lungs really quickly, and you get high really quickly. When you ingest marijuana, it has to go through your stomach, be processed. It has to get into the small intestines. The THC is pulled out into the bloodstream then. So that can take 20, 30, 40 minutes, depending on your metabolism. And certainly new users get in trouble with that because they're waiting for that high and it doesn't come, and they just keep taking more. Lots of people end up in the hospital. Some more pictures. I'm going to kind of move through this, but just to say we've had medical or prescription available THC FDA approved since the 1970s. These two pictures have the same amount of THC in them. That's 42 pills of dronabinol. That's a chocolate bar at the bottom. Both have 420 milligrams of THC. Kurova is another super high potent product. This is a cookie with 1,000 milligrams of THC in it. Each cookie has 100 servings of THC. Okay, so again,